everyone, welcome back to my channel, Lorene HD, for a new video. Actually, 3 new videos all stitched in one of a conversation that I had with Gigi Sagansky, who is a mental health advocate and founder of the podcast Driven Minds, where she interviews cultural icons on where and how they find mental strength in their everyday life. So Gigi was diagnosed with OCD and anxiety at a pretty young age, and in our videos we discuss what it was like to live with an incurable STI for me and OCD and anxiety for her, and most of all with the stigma that is attached to each condition. In the first video we discuss what impact our diagnosis had on our life. In the second one we discuss stereotypes and language that is actually keeping those stigmas alive. And in the third and last video, we discuss what impact our conditions had on our dating life. So without further ado, enjoy our chat and see you next time for a new video. Ciao!
I am a mental health advocate, and I was diagnosed with ADD when I was 10, OCD when I was 11, and I want to build and foster a community that does not feel the need to be shameful about something that is the human experience, and just get the conversations going.
Getting diagnosed was an adventure. So first of all, I experienced my first symptoms on Thanksgiving Day. Everything was closed, of course, and I couldn't see a gynecologist until the following Monday. But actually, it only took me to lie down on the examination table on that Monday for the gynecologist to look at my situation and be like, oh, that's herpes. Up until that moment, I was really in my body, like feeling my physical symptoms, but at the moment of diagnosis, I really got in my head. So it actually took me 2 years to start even accepting myself that I had genital herpes. Up until that point, I just had genital herpes more as a occasional outbreak that I was taking antiviral for, and then I was kind of like hiding my medication away when I was home so that like friends or partners wouldn't find it, but I wasn't really taking care of the mental toll that diagnosis had on me. I was kind of just like ignoring it. So yeah, 2 years later, I Googled it, and that is probably telling of like the weight of the stigma. It's it's not even something that you don't want to deal with other people. It's something that you don't want to deal with yourself. Yeah.
So I was diagnosed with OCD because I had really bad intrusive thoughts, which is a common symptom of OCD. To break it down, intrusive thoughts are when you have essentially something that bothers you rapid firing through your head. And I was 11, so I had no idea why I couldn't stop thinking about what it was that I was thinking about. I didn't understand why it gave me this just total body discomfort, and I started fearing the thought itself. I would fear that it would come. And then the moment it would came, I would start crying, and it was just this cycle that I didn't understand at all. And my psychiatrist said that I had OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And these 3 words, I was 11, they meant nothing to me. I didn't know what each one of them stood for individually. The diagnosis didn't really help me until I was older. When I was older, I was able to other it. Like, a lot of people name their OCD, like they'll name it Frank or Sharon, and they'll be like, oh God, like fucking Sharon again, you know? So that helped me other it. And the other thing that's good is when you're older, you can find communities of like-minded people who are also struggling.
Does your OCD impact your sexual life at all? And if so, how?
One of the ways in which my OCD manifests is with health anxiety. So I am very militant when it comes to, and I hate using that word because I do feel like it is so intense and pejorative, but I am very militant when it comes to sexual partners, and I insist on always using a condom or some sort of sexual protection. And even when we do, sometimes I will kind of review over and over what happened during our sexual experience. Was that really protected? For a second, it kind of got messy, and and it's really difficult to straddle these 2 worlds of being in the moment with my sexual partner, which is obviously, that's the best part about sex, with also thinking about my future self, who 4 days, 5 days later will be just freaking out in my room about, just reviewing everything that happened to make sure that it actually was safe. So you mentioned that you were caught in this shame spiral of some sort, right? Right when you were diagnosed. How did you climb out of that?
Medically speaking, this is not life-threatening, and so many people have it. Why do I choose to partake in this spiral of shame? And I realized that it was a choice at that point. Before then, I felt that it was inevitable. I inherit a virus that is stigmatized, therefore I inherit the stigma. And then I was like, wait, I can choose to decide how much this stigma is defining me. And that's where I chose to not let it define me. I'm just gonna start with a quote that I really love by George Orwell. And he said, if thoughts corrupt language, so can language corrupt thoughts. And this is like, you have to sit with it for like a second and process, but essentially it's just saying that language and thoughts go hand in hand, and that we need language to be able to adapt and evolve as thoughts outgrow it. So using the right language is not just a courtesy that you're doing to people who are going through whatever you're talking about. It is also kind of a good way to represent accurately what you're talking about. Obviously, when you say, I got tested and I'm clean, like this always kind of like annoys me, because I'm like, well, I got tested and I have genital herpes and I'm clean too. By saying I don't have anything, I'm clean, you're kind of implying that if you have something, you're dirty.
Right.
So it's like small things like this that I think are not a big effort for the person who talks to stop saying, or to maybe say, I'm, clear of STIs, or I tested negative for everything. Like there's so many other ways to say what you mean without saying what you don't mean. One last thing that I want to say about stereotypes is, obviously, before you're even sexually active, you know that if you have an STI, it means that you're promiscuous, or that you are not using protection, or that you are, dirty, not taking showers, whatever. And while having multiple partners, or being more sexually active with more people, like all of that increases the chances of contracting something. It doesn't work the other way around. Just because you have something doesn't mean that you have been promiscuous, doesn't mean that you haven't used protection. This is the dangerous thing about stereotypes, is that it generalizes. It takes one situation and it generalizes and applies to everyone. When actually, the reality is, if you use protection, if you don't use protection, if you're in a committed relationship, if you're not, if you have oral sex or penis in vagina or anal sex, like it just takes away the truth, the universal truth that sex comes with risk. Just like eating comes with risk, or breathing with COVID comes with risk. Like everything comes with risks. And when we attach the risk to behaviors, we miss out on the truth that no, actually it's just sex, like so many things in life that carries risks. Behaviors increase or decrease those risks, but the risks belong to being sexually active. What stereotypes related to mental health are problematic for you, and why?
Personally, I find it really unhelpful when people use mental struggles as adjectives. For instance, the weather is being so bipolar today. Some of these mental struggles that people make fun of and use colloquially are life-threatening. And I think that we just have to make the mistakes. I think it's really important, though, to not shame people, to not make people feel bad about their mistakes. Then they feel like they're being attacked. Just simply, just correct them and say, that might not be the kindest way to describe what you're going through. I actually am kind of a messy person. I organize nothing. I mean, I've had friends sit at lunch tables with me and been like, oh, do you need it just like that? And I'm like, that's so reductive. And I don't need it just like that, because that's just not how my mental struggle manifests. And I think that words like disorder and illness just really serve to break down self-esteem. And at least that did for me. I understand how they're helpful terms for others, but for me, they're particularly unhelpful. So sometimes I do kind of get a bit upset and hurt when someone says, oh, you're mentally ill. It's like, no, I'm mentally strong.
I love that. I love that.
Tell me how you navigate relationships with a genital herpes diagnosis.
The most daunting moments within a partnership, actually whether it's a friendship or with your family, but even more so with a sexual partner or potential partner, is the disclosure moment. So the moment that you are, one, it feels like you're letting a very vulnerable part of yourself be seen by this person, and two, when you are treating this information as a secret, then you're giving away that information and you're potentially empowering that person to tell other 10 people or 20 people. So it feels like a really, really big decision, and you get yourself to a very vulnerable position. When you are in a relationship, obviously you want to love and be loved, and you want respect, and you want understanding, and you want all these, things that we expect from a relationship. But when you have a stigmatized condition, it can feel like you're not worthy of love necessarily. That brings a bit of imbalance in the relationship. So you might stick to situations or to partners or to behaviors that are actually pretty toxic for the relationship. So there's people who have been told, no one else will accept you with what you have. So, kind of like bringing your self-esteem even lower and gaslighting you. So ultimately, I think there is this idea that once you contract an STI, an incurable STI, your sex life has to look like something. The truth is, it still is up to you, 100%, you and your partners consensually deciding what it looks like. Are you going to wear protection? Are you going to use it all the time? Are you going to be on suppressive therapy? Are you, like, all of these are choices. It's not mandatory. It has happened to me in the past that people are like, so you just have to use protection for the rest of your life until you want to have kids? And it's like, I don't have to. Like, that's an option, but transmission is not always going to be top of mind for every partner. And that's something that I don't think is discussed enough, but it's because, there's a lot of shame in acknowledging that you can still be sexually intimate with someone who has an STI and not freak out about potentially contracting something from them. Like, that is a very normal case scenario. It's, again, up to people to decide, how to go about it. So what about you? What kind of conversations, discussions do you have about OCD with partners?
I've actually never told a partner that I had OCD. I only actually became open to talking about OCD exactly 1 year ago. And since then, I have been a lone ranger. So I've actually never had to deal with it until a couple of weeks ago when I did tell a partner. Before, it's interesting because my partners only saw my symptoms, and the way that they've responded has been very open and understanding. There was a time where I needed just cleanliness all the time, and I was very just cognizant of germs. Like, I would need them to wash their hands the moment that they came into my apartment, and it's so weird. I've actually never said this out loud, so I don't know, opening the floodgates of judgment here. Before we were intimate, I'd want them to just like wash their hands or whatnot. And
that should be standard practice, by the way.
Okay, well,
yes.
Right from Laureen. There was a time when I go through periods of disassociation where I totally dissociate from my body. And I remember a partner a few years ago didn't really understand why I was having just this absolute breakdown. But he sat in the middle of an apartment hallway with me for, I think, probably 2 hours until I kind of found my body and my body became a safe place again. I've been incredibly blessed with partners who have a psychological depth and emotional bandwidth for understanding.